The first time I saw the logbook entry, my stomach dropped. April 9th, utility inventory log hash INV 478 1842. Evan Brooks checked out the flagged replacement part just before the first surge. There it was in black and white, evidence that cut through weeks of rumors and denials. This wasn't speculation. It was proof, the kind that forces a reckoning. But even with the facts staring back at me, the big questions loomed. Why did the surges always hit at exactly 1842? What was really happening at mile marker 6, and why had Evan swapped that part in secret? To understand, I had to go back to where it all started. I sat alone at the utility company storeroom records desk, overhead lights buzzing, the air thick with the scent of dust and old paper. My hands trembled as I sifted through inventory logs, searching for a pattern behind the chaos on Route 478. Then I found it. Hash INV 478 1842. April 9th, Evan Brooks's signature right next to the description. Replacement part, flagged as faulty. The timestamp lined up just before the first surge at 1842. This was no rumor. It was the kind of evidence that could shake the whole town awake. I snapped a photo for backup. The logbook felt heavier than it should, as if it carried the weight of every blackout and unexplained malfunction we'd endured. Outside, the transformers hummed steadily, but I knew that could change in an instant. Evan had made a decision, and the consequences had rippled through the entire community. I closed the logbook, heart racing. If Evan checked out that part, what else was he hiding? I needed to find out who else had seen this entry. Not wanting to jump to conclusions, I called over a colleague, someone who'd worked the records desk longer than I had. We sat together, the logbook open between us, tracing the chain of custody. Every entry was routine until Evan's. He'd checked out the part, but there was no return logged, no note, no follow-up. My colleague's lips pressed into a thin line. She quietly mentioned Evan's reputation for cutting corners, though no one had ever caught him in the act. I pressed. Had anyone else handled the part? She shook her head. The paper trail led straight to Evan. The tension in my chest grew. This wasn't just about a faulty component. It was about trust and the cracks in the town's infrastructure. I thanked her and slid the logbook back into its drawer, the metal clanging shut. If the chain of custody ended with Evan, he was the missing link. But before confronting him, I needed to know how the firehouse responded that night. The volunteer firehouse always smelled of burnt coffee and old turnout gear. Tommy Reyes met me by the lockers, his uniform wrinkled, eyes darting. He wasn't supposed to discuss electrical issues, but he owed me a favor. In the cramped office, he pulled out the call log, unofficially. There it was, April 9th, first surge, 1842, Route 478. Tommy remembered the alarms, the scramble, the radios cutting out for a full minute. I asked if he'd seen anything at mile marker 6. He hesitated, then admitted he'd left early that night before the worst of it. When I pressed for details, he grew quiet, fingers tapping the call log. The official response was all there, but he was clearly holding something back. Maybe guilt, maybe just fear of trouble. The firehouse had been caught off guard. Whatever happened at 1842, it wasn't random. I left, the call log details etched in my mind, wondering who else was keeping quiet. The town council office was silent. The kind of silence that makes you feel unwelcome. Linda Park sat behind a fortress of paperwork, her expression unreadable. She didn't like surprises, especially not about Route 478. I asked about complaints regarding the surges. She hesitated, then slid a folder across the desk. Inside, council minutes, dry but telling. Multiple mentions of complaints about Route 478. Power flickers, unexplained outages, frustrated residents. Linda's fingers drummed as I read. She admitted the council knew about the issues, but without hard proof, they couldn't escalate. She was torn, wanting to help but wary of fallout. I thanked her and tucked the minutes into my bag. The pattern was clear. Everyone knew something was wrong, but no one wanted to take responsibility. I left with more questions, but now I had the council's own words on record. The next step was clear. I needed to see mile marker 6 for myself. Standing roadside at mile marker 6, I felt exposed. The wind whipped dust across cracked asphalt. Every passing car sent a shiver up my spine. The utility pole loomed overhead, wires humming with tension. I approached the junction box, palms sweating. The metal was cool, but fresh scratches around the lock showed it had been opened recently. I crouched, examining the faded label. This was where the faulty component had been swapped. I pictured Evan here working quickly, maybe glancing over his shoulder. The ground was scattered with old cable ties and a single discarded glove. I didn't touch anything. I just took it in, the hum, the faint ozone, the sense that something had gone wrong right here. I checked my watch. 1842 was still hours away, but anticipation hung in the air. Whatever happened at this spot had triggered a chain reaction through the whole town. I snapped a photo for my records and headed back to the car, determined to get answers from Evan. I found Evan Brooks in the utility company parking lot, leaning against his truck, scrolling through his phone. He looked exhausted, shadows under his eyes. I approached, logbook photo in hand. He saw it and his face tightened. I asked directly about the part he checked out on April 9th. He tried to deflect, paperwork, overtime, but when I pressed, he admitted it. He'd swapped the component at mile marker 6. It was supposed to be temporary, just until a proper replacement arrived. He insisted it was an oversight, not sabotage. His hands fidgeted. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I asked if he realized what the surges had done, how they'd hit at exactly 1842, night after night, until the whole town was on edge. He shrugged, saying he'd meant to fix it sooner. I left him standing there, the truth finally out. I knew who was responsible, but the question of why 1842 mattered still lingered. Back at the storeroom records desk, I logged the new component, making sure every detail was entered and every box checked. The air felt lighter, almost relieved. I watched the clock as 1842 came and went. For the first time in weeks, there was no surge, no flicker, no alarms, just quiet. I double-checked the inventory log, confirming the replacement and the exact time. The chain of events was clear. Evan checked out the faulty part, installed it at mile marker 6, and the surges started. Once the component was replaced and logged, the problem stopped. I leaned back, letting the relief settle in. But one question still gnawed at me. What was it about mile marker 6 that made everything go haywire? The surges had ended, but the mystery of that spot remained. I closed the logbook, knowing the story wasn't finished. If you've ever noticed something off in your own neighborhood, Don't ignore it. Sometimes the smallest detail can unravel the whole story.